So welcome to week 3. And this week we're going on a bit of a deep dive into legislation. In this case, we're looking at diversity, inclusion, and equity. So let me just share my screen because I, of course, did a PowerPoint. I don't know why. It just helps me to stay organized. So diversity, equity, and inclusion. So this week, I wanted to, actually I'm going to talk about the first assignment first, but then I'm going to talk about what should the goal be, or I'm going to ask you guys to talk about it. So should organizations be focusing on equity, diversity, inclusion, all of the above, none of the above? Then I'm going to put you into teams, and I'm organizing the teams based on the companies you were asked to look at. So you'll get some different perspectives. So sharing what you discovered about their best practices, and then applying it to the case study. So if Aisha has recognized that there seems to be some divergence between her community and what's happening within her business, how might she incorporate some of these ideas into her business strategy? So assignment number 1 is not due until May 6th, and next week we're going to take a vote on whether May 6th is the best date or if you want the weekend to work on it. Next week in our facilitated discussion, you guys are going to be doing some research on the 13 factors of psychological health and safety in the workplace and sharing what each of the factors are. And that is important information that's going to drive the assignment. So you're putting together a proposal that's going to be linked to the organization's strategic goals, which are outlined in the assignment, that it's data-based. And I have provided you with a survey that was done of the employees to find out about the 13 factors and what they were thinking were strong and weak links. Your proposal is going to outline up to two initiatives that you think Aisha could take in order to address these issues. And then you're going to outline a process for how she's going to do it. So that's what the assignment's about. And there is an assignment sheet that's posted and a rubric that's posted. I just wanted to draw it to your attention now because today is like a practice. So we're going to take the theories and practices that we've been reading about this week and try and apply them to what's going on at the pharmacy. So moving on, my question to you guys is, what should the goal be? Equity, diversity, or inclusion? And I just wanted to go through a couple of visuals and then I'll open it up for some thoughts. So this one was up on the site, and it's getting to the idea of the difference between equality and equity. And so if we treat everybody the same, then we end up where everyone's being treated equally. And if we start to give people advantages or supports to help them gain equal access, then...
Can you hear it?
Whoops. Joanne, can you turn off your mic?
Sorry, yes.
No problem. So if we, in the second image, we have supports so that they have equal access. So now they're being treated equitably. But in the third image, what we're trying to do is get rid of the systemic barriers within the organization. So it doesn't matter. We don't need to support people. They all are, they all have access. They all can participate equally. So that's kind of one way of thinking about it. And then I just love this one. Diversity is being invited to the party. I like to party. Inclusion is being asked to dance. I love to dance. But belonging is feeling free to dance however you want. So I'm going to open it up for a couple of comments. Anybody, based on what you read, based on these visuals, what do you think? What's more important? Or what's important in your organization? Doug, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I think the end goal is inclusion. Or sorry, is the end goal is at the end, you want everybody to belong. The path to get there obviously starts with equality and moves to equity, and through that I think you can get to the final tier.
Okay, so you're seeing it as a process with different tiers. Okay. Anyone else have a thought they want to share? And you can put up your hand and then I'll be able to see who wants to say something. Anybody? Eleanor?
Yeah, I was just looking for the hand, but I would say that you could have a situation that provides equity that still doesn't provide diversity and inclusion. Like, for example, those 3 white figures on the image. And so to me, inclusion would be the end goal, the highest thing for an organization to look for, because that takes equity and diversity into consideration and makes a culture where those things are valued.
Okay. All right. Well, as you're talking in your groups, think about this question, because, and certainly think about the company that you read about and what was their focus and why was that their focus? And because it was their focus, what did they end up doing that might have been unique to some of the other companies? And if you're interested in exploring this, there's a really interesting article on Forbes, and I'll post this so you can get the URL. But it was a very interesting article on why this author thought that inclusion was more important than diversity. We haven't talked about it in this course, but we did talk about it in organizational behavior. And that's the whole issue of unconscious bias. And so it's those ingrained responses that we have that we're not aware of that impact on our decisions. And if you want to have a little bit of an eye-opener, I really recommend trying out this Project Implicit that's through Harvard. And they have a number of different tests that you can do. So you can do the traditional like gender or black versus white, but you can also do one that's all about weight. And it's just an exercise to let you see where maybe some of your unconscious beliefs are impacting on your behaviors. And an author that I really, really like because she makes the whole discussion so accessible. And, you know, sometimes a lot of it feels like pointing fingers and there's good people and bad people. And what Dolly Chugg is trying to say is there's no such thing as good people and bad people. There are forces in our lives, which she calls headwinds and tailwinds. And tailwinds, like if anybody here rides a bike, when you got a tailwind, you can go really fast and you can go really far and you don't have to spend a lot of energy. But when you turn around and you're trying to go back, holy smokes, it takes a lot of work to do the same. And that's what she says about our world, that we have headwinds and tailwinds that are linked to our social and economic realities that perpetuate some of the biases that exist. Okay, so that's just some things you might want to check out. So I'm going to put you into small groups, and I put you into the groups based on the company that you were doing your research on for that worksheet. And so you might want to take a picture of this slide, so you've got some stuff to think about. One of the questions that you might want to ask was, when the leader from the organization was discussing their initiatives, were they talking about the culture of the organization, or were they talking about the initiatives as being a program that was happening? You might want to talk about who came first. Was the emphasis on being relatable to customers, about the impact on employees, or did they talk about their leadership teams? The other way that they sometimes vary is sort of the justification for what they're doing. So did they put together a business case? So if we are more diverse, then we have more ideas and perspectives, so now we can be more profitable. Or did they say something like, hey, this is the right thing to do, and that's why we're doing it? And also talk about, an example of something you did that you thought worked well, okay? And I'm asking you guys to record a couple of key thoughts on a PowerPoint, because when you're done sharing, I'm going to put them onto this overall deck so that we've got them all in one place and we can share that. So
this meeting is being recorded.
Okay, so it looks like we're all back. If you're not muted, if you could mute yourself. And I'd like to go to the first group. And if you did do a PowerPoint, I understand that I didn't open up the sharing until partway, and the one group said it didn't work. But group one, so Steve, Doug, and Dawn, who's going to speak for the group? What were some of the key points?
Well, some of the things that we talked about, it seemed like we all agreed that one second here, sorry. It seemed like everything was leadership driven. It came from the top down to form their DEI programs. And there seemed to be a combination. It seemed to be a combination between business and the right thing to do. Most of them, like now, it seems like it's evolved into the right thing to do, but it may have started off as kind of the vision of leadership and as a business case.
Okay.
And we all kind of agreed that, as far as what worked in the different, everybody did it a little bit differently. I had Marriott, and one of the things that worked for them is they've kind of taken it upon themselves to get each and every employee to kind of have that ownership of the program. And everybody kind of plays a part in the puzzle. And together they kind of have kind of made it so that it's everybody's responsibility, and it seems to get everybody engaged and on board with the kind of the DEI program.
Okay. So are those 3 bullets okay with that group that I put down?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so.
Great, thank you. All right, group number 2, Lori, Eleanor, no, wait a minute, where am I looking? Eleanor, Jessica, and Lori. Who was speaking for you?
I took the notes so I can speak.
Okay, do you have a slide, or do you want me to do the same thing?
I don't, but I can paste it into the chat if you want.
It's okay, I'll take notes as you go, and you can tell me if I got it or not.
Okay, so for the first culture versus program, we all agreed that it was program-based work that acted as small steps and that developed into the culture of the business. So it may not have begun as the culture, but it became the culture over time.
Okay.
For the next one, we thought for the companies we looked at, for General Motors and Schneider Electric, customers seemed to be the driving factor, but for Boston Scientific, it really seemed to be employees and leadership, where they were attaining certain recruitment goals.
Yeah. Woo. Okay, and there we go. Go ahead.
So it seemed for us, again, sort of with the first point, it was more of a business case. And it seemed that these reports were selling the idea of D&I being profitable to other businesses rather than touting the cultural impact.
Yeah, okay. Great.
And for the last one, what worked was small steps and programs that build onto the initiatives. They had long-term priorities for sustainable change rather than quick change, but they accelerated certain goals to meet the needs for certain groups.
Okay. So are those bullets capturing it, Eleanor? Great, thank you very much. All right. Team number three is Duran, Aaron, and John. So who's going to speak on your behalf?
I took the notes, but I'll make sure my team knows they can jump in.
Okay.
We felt we were in a different time warp. We thought we were only speaking for about 2 minutes and then the thing ended. So we didn't finish.
That's okay.
We'll give you what
You
we
were in
have.
the flow. That's awesome.
Yeah. Let me just go right to the notes there. So we each had individual companies, Marks and Spencer, Boston Scientific, and Schneider Electric. Marks and Spencer and Schneider, we both felt were pretty vague on programming and specific steps taken. So suggests they're emphasizing the importance of culture. Whereas Boston Scientific, they described very specific targets across the organization and yearly targets upon that to improve over time. It looked like with 2 of the 3 the efforts, started with employees, Boston Scientific and Schneider, whereas at Marks and Spencer, it talked about building the infrastructure to deliver the culture. I got the sense from Marks and Spencer there's more of a right thing to do, but without speaking to specific business outcomes, they had the customer in mind repeatedly through their case. So like if they, if their staff can understand the importance of inclusion and a culture that embraces inclusion, their customers will reward the organization as a result. So they spoke to that without any specifics. It was just more the right thing to do. Whereas Boston Scientific, I think I was told they mentioned a specific ROI. And then what worked, we didn't get to the last one. I don't know if my team members want to offer any top up there.
I mean, the Boston Scientific one specifically, as I mentioned in my group, it's unsurprisingly was quite detailed in its program of numbers, and they had a specific program that they had with HBCUs. It was called a Thread Through program to hire Black engineers direct out of school. And they actually started promoting diversity back in 2013, and we're working on slow long-term growth. They're focused on sustainability and longevity, and their program is, something that it is working for them. And they actually had a breakdown of for inclusion, diversity, and like women in leadership numbers to reach, and they reached 2 out of 3 by 2020, which was their goal. And then they also then did something called a 3-up, which is that they wanted to push those numbers by 3% by 2023. And they seem to be on track for that as well. And they said, that they are seeing they specifically used return on investment and return on engagement. So yeah, they considered themselves like a success story in that sense, but mentioned that they did have one of the struggles was actually embedding it in the strategy permanently. Like it's hard to do that. But one of the notes that I wrote down that they said for the company was diversity is a given, inclusion is a choice, and equity is the goal. And I thought that that was kind of an interesting note to take.
Say that again.
Diversity is a given, inclusion is a choice, and equity is the goal.
Choice. Boop. And equity is the goal.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, thank you very much.
I just wanted to flag something real quick from the Schneider thing that I just thought was really neat. You don't need to go at length at it. I just thought it was cool. They developed a sustainability index metric. They lined it up with the UN Sustainability Development Goals. They tracked it quarterly, audited it externally annually, and they tied year-end bonuses to the goals. I just thought that was kind of neat.
Yeah. So, I mean, when I was reading through them, a lot of them came through loud and clear. If you don't measure it, it's not important. So, and that's a good example of how not only did they measure it, but they pushed the accountability by making it part of the incentive package. Well, hopefully first the performance management and then link some incentives to it. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
I just want to mention too there, if it's not sustainable, what's the point? Like, I think, a couple years ago too, with the idea of like people tried to push some of this stuff through a little too quickly without necessarily thinking about like how it fits with their business or what, like they didn't put those measurables in or, tried to rush things through without really putting in a solid plan, like especially at like the smaller business level as opposed to a larger corporate level.
Yeah.
So yeah, the sustainability factor, especially in the one that I read, made a lot of sense.
Because you don't want your program becoming the flavor of the month and disappearing if you're really wanting to make long-term change. Okay, let's go to team number 4, Marcia and Rylan. Who wants to speak to what you guys were thinking?
Well, I took the notes so I can do a bit of speaking. We also were caught in the time warp because we only got to like the first question.
That's okay.
So yeah, we're like, what's happening right now? So for the first question, I'm just going to pull up my notes here. And then Kim did a lot of reading, so I'm sure she can speak to the other points. So for the first question, culture versus program, Kim had done the Marriott, and shows that the culture is focused on DEI. They're 94 years in business, and their belief system, so it's ingrained in their belief system and ingrained from the beginning. So that was something that is definitely part of the culture. And Rylan did the research for Anthem, and she said the culture, it was also culture because it was who we are. And I did the research for Boston Scientific, and again, same as was just mentioned, that it started as a program and then it was just ingraining into the culture. So that same, I pulled out that same sentence: diversity is a given, inclusion is a choice, and equity is the goal. We also recognize that diversity, equity, and inclusion can really drive business results.
Okay, so sorry, I missed the second company. What was, there was
Anthem.
Marriott, Boston Scientific, and
Anthem.
Anthem? I don't know how to spell Anthem. We'll just put A for now.
A-N-T-H-E.
There.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then Boston Scientific was a movement from a program to culture.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, and the same quote, so I won't put it in again. But those are some some interesting pieces. When I went through, because I looked at all of your last names and I thought I got the right companies, but I didn't do Anthem. But when I was going through, yeah, you could see there was a real difference. There were some that were saying that it was really part of their culture, that there were some that were really linking it to either the idea of knowing who your customers are or knowing who your employees are, you know, but they had the two different focuses there. And but definitely most of them were saying very clearly what you value, you measure. So having the metrics in place, but one of them I remembered said that they were really challenged with understanding what to measure when it came to inclusion. That when it came to diversity, it was a lot easier because you could measure, you know, how many women you had in management, how many visible minorities you had, and so on. And so it was easy to do. But the other thing was, in the whole argument, I just want to go back to this one, why we need to focus on inclusion rather than diversity. One of his arguments was that when we focus on diversity, we're just continuing the whole stereotyping process. And the example he gave is, you know, something like there's 400 million Hispanic people in this world. But if you lump them all into one group that says they're Hispanic, that's a stereotype. And so that's probably not going to be helping to recognize who people are and to encourage them to being asked to dance or feeling free to dance however they want to dance. Okay, so those are some of the ideas. Okay, I'm going to stop. Oh, wait a minute. So now the next stage, and I want to get there because this is the, so we've got, wait a minute. First of all, you know what I'm going to do? Get out your cameras and take pictures of each of these summary pages that I have so that you've got these for the next part of the discussion. So there's team one. And take a picture of that. Here's team two, and you can take a picture of that. And if I'm going too fast, somebody holler at me. Here's team three coming. Take a picture of that one. And finally, here's team four. And team four, quality, right? Okay, so the next step is, so how does Aisha incorporate this into her business? Because she has received information that there is a large Indigenous population that's within her community. She's trying to create a community-based holistic pharmacy. So she wants to be inclusive and have people participate either as customers or as employees, regardless of their race or any of those things. So I want you guys to share some ideas on how she might actually do this. So this is the application part. And now I'm going to recreate rooms, and I'm just going to do 3 rooms. And let me do this again, 3 rooms. And I'm going to mix you up so that you have people that were in other groups, at least one from each of the groups in your group, so you can share some of the things you talked about. So Dawn. Okay, I didn't record that comment, John. Okay, maybe we'll start with group 3 this time. So, whoops, that was my timer. So would somebody from group 3 like to share with us your thoughts on what Aisha can do to promote diversity, inclusion, and equity?
Can you remind us who group 3?
Sorry, John, Lori, Rylan, and Steve.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Good.
So we came up with a fourth one, and on top of diversity, inclusion, and equity was belonging.
Excellent.
All right. So some of the things we came up with for how she could accomplish this was reaching out to different community. Usually has like friendship centers, like here in Halifax. We have the Mi'kmaq Friendship Center here in Halifax. So they have different communities have those different types of centers. Reach out to them to start making connections and networking to see what she could carry in her store that may attract the communities from there. We'd also talked about sponsoring some of the different community events like Greek Fest, things like that. Also reaching out to the different schools. Because she's a pharmacy, there's some on-job training that is required as part of their pharmacy program.
Yep.
So maybe she could offer up her store as part of a place for those communities to have their members do on-job training, plus that builds a connection between those
Excellent.
communities.
Okay, so outreach to the community centers, looking at some of the, and finding out what their needs are, maybe changing a product list, reaching out and offering to do the sort of co-op experience part for Indigenous students in pharmacy. Those are some cool ideas. Great. Thank you very much. Okay, group number 2, which is Doug, Aaron, Jessica, and Marcia. What kinds of ideas did you guys have?
So we had some ideas like having information nights, get customers coming into the pharmacy, building that rapport with the community. There was one of the articles that mentioned having a newsletter. So putting out a newsletter, taking a survey of products that people would like to see. And then we talked a lot about just kind of educating from within and just having people on staff to be able to educate. So growing from the inside, making it more appealing to the community as a whole, and developing an awareness of who her community is. So I think we think she's taken some really great steps in actually recognizing that. And then we talked a little bit about that article, the open hiring. So removing barriers and, using the concept of open hiring. So without a resume and everything else like that especially obviously for positions like retail, not like pharmacy ones.
Just in case somebody didn't have a chance to look at that one, can you just give a quick summary of what that article was suggesting and where you might apply it within the pharmacy?
So the concept of open hiring, they say it's an innovative, counterintuitive strategy worth considering if your organization finds it difficult to recruit and retain. So basically what it does is it doesn't involve resumes, interviews, and background checks. It focused solely on the human potential and providing employment to anyone willing and able to work. So basically you have like a list of people and you just kind of work your way down from there. And so you don't, new hires, like for the Grayston Bakery, which is one of the ones that they talked about, is that as new hires are offered a position when their name comes up next on the list of people who have expressed interest in working in the bakery. No resume, job interview, background check, or a drug test is required. And so then that means that the business has virtually no hiring costs.
Okay, so the whole concept is if I'm going to spend so much money in weeding people out of positions that, I think it applies more to positions that don't require specialized skills.
Yes.
Rather than spending a whole bunch of money weeding people out, take that money and put it into the development of employees. So know that they're going to come in and I'm going to be teaching them a whole bunch of skills. And so that's where I'm putting my money as opposed to doing interviews and all of that. So it's a interesting concept. And given the labor market right now, you know, might be worth thinking about.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you very much. That was room number 2. And from room number 1, we have Dawn, Doram, Eleanor, and Kim. Who wants to speak for your group?
I did take notes, but I'll screen share and invite anybody on our team to present. So I'm going to screen share. I'm going to be, there you go. Those are our points. I hope they reflect what the team described. Here we are.
Okay.
Or I could just go.
Yeah.
All right. So one of the team members brought up a great quote that struck them: focus on inclusion, diversity will follow. I think that was a theme from what we've been reading.
Yep.
A great suggestion was get the staff in cultural competency training and make genuine efforts to educate and work that into your training regime.
Okay. Because that definitely would impact both on customers feeling as if they were being welcomed, but also helping employees feel like they belong.
Right.
Okay.
And sort of, like you said, you reveal on bias and all the rest of it. So I think we all carry some of that. The same classmate mentioned the importance of networking and just this, you know, proactive effort to find ways to engage in the community and the population that you're trying to form those relationships with.
Okay.
Don't assume that, you know, by framing the job opportunity and posting equally that it means that you check the box. Make sure that you're making a genuine effort to engage with that community you're interested in. That comes repeated a little bit below. There's an interesting idea on, you know, targeting, promoting scholarships opportunities within the workplace.
Okay.
Encourage participation in events per above. Bring in products, you know, speaking about Aisha's, bring in products and the knowledge and expertise that appeal to this population, and then, you know, use that to convert on employment.
Mm-hmm.
Engage with, again, around this genuine effort, engage with local band office to support communications within this community.
Cool.
So I hope that wasn't too thin. Team can jump in and add there. We're good?
I think we're good.
Yeah,
That was
2
great.
minutes. Yeah.
So lots of really good ideas there. So, and if there were a number of, everyone's calling me in the last 2 seconds. Sorry about that. So when you're working on the assignment you're going to hand in, same kind of process. It's like, how do I sort of take what I've been reading and pull it into some key thoughts that I need to address? And then knowing Aisha's organization, how do I apply it there? Because we saw when we looked at all of those different companies, they all tried to do diversity differently. And they were all recognized for what they were doing as being leaders in this area. So there's not just a cookie cutter answer. That would be so easy, right? But there's no cookie cutter answer. It's sort of what works within your organization and also measuring and changing over time. So when you're working on the next assignment, same kind of process. Pull the theories together so that they make some sense to you. And then ask yourself, how can you use that? What's important and how do you apply it? Another reminder is with this assignment, if you want to work with somebody, please do. You can have 2 people in a group if you want. With a second assignment, you can work with somebody as well. But what I am going to encourage you to do is to work with somebody else. Don't always work with the same person, because you all come with different backgrounds and perspectives, and this is your opportunity to gain from each other and approach although it is more challenging to work in a group, it also has a benefit that you have different perspectives. So with that, I'm going to stop for today, and thank you very much for coming. And I'll hang around for a couple of minutes in case anybody has any questions, but if not, have a great week. And next week, it's all about health and safety. So more legislation. Have a great week, guys.